Okay, now we will move on to the second part of the vendor ledger creation. After creating the vendor default settings, next step is to create each vendor in the system. Now we need to create the vendor. Separate vendor need to have a separate card or the location whereby we will enter the information relevant to the vendor, including the purchases made from the given vendor. So that particular card need to be designed now. So to create the vendor ledger, you can see the vendor ledger creation. So we need to go and enter all the required information relevant to the vendor, related to the vendor information, and that card need to be saved. So rather than in a manual system, rather than maintaining the separate file for the each vendor, here we will be maintaining individual card which will show all required information relevant to the given vendor. Other than that, the additional information which is you need to maintain, which was created under the default, we can use that as well. So at the moment, if I again show you the situation now, now we are here. You can see we have already created the general ledger by doing many activities. You can remember the activities you completed in the general ledger. Then we have set up the creditors or the vendor ledger by giving the vendor default settings. So you have finished this part now. And meantime, when you create the vendor defaults, we have already linked these two ledgers together. So the general ledger and the vendor module is at the moment working together as a one system, where the linkages are given under the default setting. So I hope you got that idea in the discussion what we have completed just now. So it's a time for us to now go and see how the vendors are going to be created, right? So let's go back to our handout. This is the vendor creation. Now to create the vendors, we need to go to the maintain vendor window. So this is the view of the maintain vendor window. As you can see, maintain vendor window consists of many tabs again. You can see the general tab, address tab, history tab, and purchase information tab. All the information what we need to enter into each of these tabs need to be entered properly to create that particular vendor, right? So the vendor can be created by using this particular card, which is called maintain vendor card. Now first of all, let's look at how to access into this vendor card. There are again various methods which you can do. First method is available here. You can go to the maintain main menu command, and then you can see the separate command called vendors. By clicking the vendor command, it will open up the vendor creation window. This is the window which help us to enter the details about your vendor, right? Most of the things what we have given in the default settings will appear here automatically. I will show those things. And meantime, other than that, some other information relevant to the vendor what we require to maintain within our ledger, we need to create here, right? So that is the vendor creation card, or called maintain vendor window. So that is the first method, right? Second method, if you are in the vendor and purchase module, if you are in the vendor purchase module, there we can see the separate button called vendor. By clicking the vendor button, and if you want to create the new vendor, you can click the new vendor command, which will open up the vendor ledger card again. So these are the two methods available for you to access into the vendor ledger, right? So these are the two methods mentioned in your handout as well. It is available in your system as well, right? So first we will go to the general tab, that is the tab open up here. So okay, so I will go back to the package. Now this is the card we are talking about. Now at the top you can see the common area, whereby the common area consists of three elements. One is the vendor ID, which is, you can see the compulsory field. This is the vendor ID. It's a compulsory field. When you type the code for the vendor, that code is belong to the particular given vendor. So when we are designing the vendor IDs, make sure you cannot design the vendor IDs such as 001, 002, 003 and so forth. No meaning at all. No one can identify which vendor by looking into the number. So it is recommended you to take a part of the name and then go by certain digit, because the same codes or the same letters can appear with another vendor. So the each vendor need to have a unique number. So you cannot repeat the same number for the two person. That's why it's like a ID number, whereby we need to have very specific ID for each and every vendor. So the recommendation when you are creating the vendor ID, get a part of the name of the vendor and then go by several digits of numbers, whereby you can differentiate them in case if the same letters will appear with another vendor, then you can differentiate that vendor with the numbers, right? So that is the idea. And also there's a common area whereby you need to enter the name of the vendor. It may be the company, it may be the individuals, it may be the corporation, it may be the government organization, anything. So enter the name of the particular vendor under the name, right? So those are the two items which we have to enter as like common. And sometimes we can create a vendor whom we are not going to use at present, but for the future use. In that case, if you enter the vendor information into this particular sheet, then you can inactive that. Inactive mean you are already knowing this particular button with the ledger accounts as well. Inactive mean you are not able to do the transaction with particular vendor at this moment, right? In future, after removing this tick, you will be able to handle that vendor as well. So if you are creating for a vendor for the future, then you inactive and keep them in the ledger, and later you can open up and get their services, right? Now these are the common area information what we have to enter for the vendor card. Then if you go by each of these tabs, let me quickly explain all these tab details. Then after that, we will be going to the handout and creating our vendors according to the handout. So the general tab will give the general information about your vendor, where you need to enter the contact name of the vendor, contact person from the vendor side. Then if you know the account number of the vendor, so if you are allocated the separate account for the vendor accounts, that account number can be entered here. That is not a compulsory field. Then the address of the vendor, main address of the vendor, we can enter into the few lines, right? Then you can see what we have created under the default setting, customize field, whereby we can enter the sales manager's name and any special note related to the given vendor if it is available. Other things are not activated. You can remember we have closed that, and even we can go back to that setting and redo it again from this particular link, right? So these are coming from the defaults. Then the vendor type. Now if you have a vendor categories, various, maybe the credit vendors, maybe the cash vendors, maybe the corporations, maybe the companies, such as grouping. So the vendor grouping, this is for the reporting purpose, whereby you can get the group reports of the particular category of vendors. We can categorize them under the vendor category. As you can remember, we have not used the 1099 setting. Again, I am referring to this, right? Default settings, we have not used that. So that's why it is appearing like non-existence. And also you can see the expenses account which you have selected from the vendor ledger. Here it is automatically appearing in each and every vendor card. දැන් පුතාලා හදිසියෙ default දැම්මේ නැත්නම් මෙතනකින් අපිට සිද්ධ වෙනවා ledger එකට ගිහිල්ලා එකින් එකට මේ ගිණුම attach කරන්න. So it is automatically attached due to the fact that is taken from the vendor default settings. And the telephone numbers, we can maintain 2 telephone numbers, fax number, email address, and the website of the vendor. These are the common information required to enter for the vendor ledger. Then if you go to the address tab, now sometimes you may vendor may be having different location for their offices. Maybe the stores in one place, maybe the head office in another place, maybe the some other payment options, so the payment office is another location. So whereby each of these documents what we are going to post to the vendor need to be now go to the different location. In this situation, you can see we can create many other addresses other than the general address entered in the main page. So if you have separate addresses, when you enter that addresses into the line 2, line 3, line 4, by giving all the details, then we can mention that the payment need to go to the remit 2 address. If the purchase order need to be sent to the remit 3 address, likewise, you can send the shipment is need to go for the particular address. Likewise, you can give the different locations. So when we are going to send the document, say the purchase order, when you are going to print, that purchase order will take automatically the given address, not the original address, right? When you are going to make the payment voucher will take only the address which is highlighted in the remit to address line. Likewise, if we are having different addresses, different locations, your buildings, then we can go ahead with adding those addresses, and then according to that we have to fix the items accordingly, right? That is the tab we call address tab. Then if you go to the history tab, you don't have to do anything. All the purchases made and all the payment made to the given vendor for the given month will appear automatically into this particular box when we are going to do the transaction. So you don't have to type anything. But here again, similar manner, last invoice date automatically will taken from the system and the last invoice value will appear. So we don't have to enter anything here again. Last payment date and the amount will appear again similar manner from the system. Only thing if you like to mention here, vendor since, that means the relationship. When you started relationship with a particular vendor, if you think that is an important information for you to maintain regarding the vendor relationship, then you can go to the calendar and you can establish that relationship date here to make sure that you know this particular vendor is working with you for the last 10, 15 or 20 years. So that information also vital when you are going to handle the vendor. Other than that, you need to come to this particular tab called history when you are going to enter the beginning balances to the vendor. You can see the beginning balance button is available here, whereby when we are entering the beginning balance to the respective vendors, we need to click this and then we can go to the beginning balance window. We will see that little later once you create the vendors. Then the last tab is a purchase information tab. Most of the things in the purchase information tab is taken from the default setting. So you can see the terms and conditions what we have set forth under the default settings are appearing here. Can you see that? Net due days is 60, discount in 30, discount percentage 3%, credit limit 500. Now for example, you have several vendors going with this condition, but the few vendors, 1 or 2 persons are not agree with this condition. In that situation, we need to change only the particular person or two by clicking the drop down and going to the customization button and do the customization. So we can change anything here now and then we can save this with the particular vendor. So that particular terms and credit are applicable only for the selected vendor. Okay. Other than that, if you know the purchase rep, now we have not created purchase reps from our side, so we can attach him. If the tax ID number is available with the vendor tax ID number, we can enter. And also the shipping method. There are various shipping method available under the default settings of the inventory. At the moment, we have not learned that, but when we come to the setting of each item, I will show that link. So you can see the inventory defaults, whereby we can change this shipping method. What method you are going to use to courier the items or deliver the items to your supplier, deliver the items to your stores. So that will be set here, right? So those are the items. Now here it's not very important whether you are going to send this delivery item by paper form or the email, anything can be there. So once you finish entering all the information provided to your vendor card, then you can click the save and new to save this vendor and clean the window. So one by one, then we can add our vendors into the system. So let's go back to our handout now simply and try to create our vendors. This is going to be the activity number 5.2, right? 5.2, where I will show you how to create the vendor. Now each vendor, as I mentioned, we are going to have separate ID number. So we have given the ID by using the 2 letters and some digits, right? So that is the ID we are going to use for our vendor. So the first vendor, we can enter his ID. Then we can enter his name, which is given here, QA Fabric Private Limited. So that is the name of the vendor. So we can take that name and then we can either paste or either you can do it by doing that activity later, right? So we will be going back to our vendor card and entering the name. So the general tab information first we have to enter. You can see the contact person is Mr. Roshan. So we can enter his name, Mr. Roshan, and there's no account number given, but we have given the address. So 400 Kirulapana, Colombo 5. So that is the address need to be entered into the vendor card. So the mailing address number 400 Kirulapana, then it comes like a Colombo 5 and Sri Lanka. So we can type that as well. Colombo 5, Sri Lanka you can pick from the list because it is already there, right? So Sri Lanka, this is the address of the vendor, main address of the vendor. Then it says you have to link, it's a type of the vendor is credit type. So it's a credit vendor. So we will mention that credit vendor, and the account number is correctly taken. You don't have to change, and the telephone numbers and the fax numbers are given. So accordingly, we have to enter that as well into the vendor card because these are vital and important information for the vendors, right? So we will be entering the telephone number and also the fax number, appropriate place you need to enter that. Make sure you entering all the things into the correct place other than wrong places, right? So there are two telephone numbers, you have only one, you skip the second and put the details. Then we got the website of the vendor and his email address. That is also vital information. We will pick that and we will enter that into the system as well. So we got the email of the vendor as well as we got the his website. So the both informations are provided, whereby it is crucial for us to enter all the information. Website also entered. Then the sales manager's name also given. So the sales manager's name also information what is required for us. So we will be maintaining that under the special area, whereby you can enter the additional details. There are no special note to the particular vendor. Now you have entered all the information provided to the general tab. That's it for the general tab. Then we will move on to the address tab and see whether we have some information relevant to the address tab. Here again it will explain what you mean by the address tab, and the view of the address tab is given, so you can read it. So according to here, information given in the activity number 5.3, APA 2020 Private Limited decided as follows: to copy the mailing address QA Fabric Limited into the remit 1 address. So අපිට කියනවා mailing address එක copy කරන්න කියලා remit 1 address. How to do that? So very simple. You go to the general tab and you can see the copy command here. You just click that and then go to the address tab and check. You can see the QA Fabric first address will appear at the top of the remit 1 address, automatically taken, right? Just go on to the particular tab and click that and come back to the address tab. Your address is there. So that is the first thing. Secondly, it says create following address to remit number 2 address and enter the purchase orders for this particular address. So purchase orders deliver කරන්න ඕනේ address එකක් දීලා තියෙනවා for the company different address. So we will be going by that, entering into the second line. Second line. So you got the number 120 Nugegoda, Sri Lanka. That is the place whereby we need to forward our purchase orders. So we will send and see whether Nugegoda is available. Nugegoda. We can put the Nugegoda as a city, right? City. So if it is there, we can select. So it's there. And Sri Lanka also there, we can select. So we have taken, and not only the creation part, it says you need to remit, set the purchase order address. So the purchase orders, the first one you need to go to the mailing address. Purchase order need to go to the remit to address, and the shipment silence, that means the mailing address. So that means when you are going to send the purchase order will go to the address called number 120 Nugegoda, Sri Lanka. When you are sending the payments and the shipment and the general letters, that goes to the number 400 Kirillapana, Colombo 5, Sri Lanka, right? So two different addresses are attached. So one by one you don't have to save. Then we will look at the other information. History tab, nothing to do, as I mentioned, is basically going for the beginning balance entry. And then we will look at whether we have any other information to enter under the purchase information tab. Now here under the purchase information tab, it says activity number 5.4, this particular APMA Private Limited decided to select customer pickup method as a shipping method for the QA Fabric Limited. So QA Fabric Limited is like a badu apita deliver when customer pickup. That means we will be collecting the item from the supplier. So that need to be set here under the purchase information, and to set that you need to go to the drop down and then select the customer pickup method. Okay, that method is there, so you can select customer pickup method. So that is the method we are going to do. And also other details are silence. That means the defaults are applicable. There are no specific item, defaults are applicable. So that's it. We have created our first supplier. Save and clean the window. You should click save and new command. That will clean your window. Then you can see the list of other suppliers. Activity number 5.5 says create the following vendor. Now we have to create another 6 more vendors. Let's quickly create all the vendors. You can look at the way how I created all 6 vendors. So we have entered the ID for the second vendor. COS Clothing is the name. So we should enter that name into the name place. So we will type or copy and paste, and the contact person name is also there. So we can take his name and we can enter that into the system. let's go to the general tab and enter the contact person name. So that is in the general. Then you got mailing address, number 25 upon 4 Maharagama. So that will be the address of the new supplier mailing address. So we can enter Maharagama as a city. And if you want the country, we can pick the country as well, Sri Lanka, that is there. And then we can see the same category is also coming under the credit category we have created. We can select that, right? No need to type again. Credit category and the telephone number, account numbers are correct. No need to worry about the account number because it's also coming from the clothing business. So we have to enter his telephone number, and then we have to enter his fax number. That is also crucial item. Need to enter his fax number. We will enter that fax number, and then if the email and other things are there, so the email address is there, no website, so we will be entering the person's email address as well into the system. And then it says no web address, no remit addresses. That means all the mails will be forwarded into the general address, and the shipping method is customer pickup, and terms and conditions are defaults. It's silence, right? No problem. So that means no other additional information, no addresses be entered, purchase information, customer pickup method, that's it, and the defaults are applicable. So the second supplier is ready. Save and new. Moving into the third supplier quickly and creating NT001 is the supplier code. Let us enter the code of the supplier first. Here under the two suppliers are already there. So our third supplier will be the new person. So we will be entering the new code for that person, and the name is Nation Traders Private Limited. That is going like a name of the supplier. Let us take his name, enter the name, then shift into the general tab because most of the information relevant to the general tab. Contact person name is given, so we will be entering that. So that will be the contact person name. Please enter that correctly. And then that will put under the contact name, and the address also given, number 25 upon 4, same number, but it's Panadura, right? Different location. Same number, different location. So city will be the Panadura. And if you like to enter the Sri Lanka as well, you can select that, no problem whether you entered it on. Credit cost supplier and also the telephone numbers are provided that need to be entered. Credit cost supplier, and the account number is correct, telephone number is given, and then the fax number is given. We can enter that. All the information is very much pretty important, right? And the mail address is given, we have to enter that as well because it's given to us. So we will enter it, mail address, and also we can see that person is having the website which we need to enter also. So that is the next option we have to enter here. That is going to be your web address. Enter that as well, web address. And then what else given? Now you can see the remit to address is changing. So first of all, you have to take the company name for that, Nation Traders Private Limited. You have to enter the again name of the company. You should go to the address tab and then enter the recipient in the remit to line, and then you go to the other details of the remit to. It says remit to line. You can see number 510 Ratmalana. That will be the address, right? So enter that address and then pick what we need to enter. Number 510 and the city is Ratmalana. And also if you like country, then you can pick the country as well. Then we have to check what we need to remit to this particular address. It says purchase orders and the payments are carried out using this address. Purchase orders and payment need to be forwarded into this particular given address. So we will be changing. Payments need to go to the remit to address and purchase order need to go to the remit to address. So the make sure that additional address create කරොත් ඒකට යන document එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. So that document need to be attached from the relevant information given to you. So here the information, and they are going to use the courier method, and the terms and conditions are default. So we'll go to the purchase information, courier method will be using, and these items are default, no need to change. Save and new. So 3 suppliers are completed by now. Moving into the 4th supplier, NES001 is the code of the supplier. Enter that first into the code. code number of the supplier. Then you take the name of the supplier, Nest Trading, that is the supplier name. We will enter that also into the name, and then we will move on to the general tab and enter the general information, contact person and the contact details, right? Contact address also necessary to enter. So we will enter the contact person first. So it will not selected again. So it's a contact person. We will enter that here. And also then we have to enter the address Nigambu. Number 310, Nigambu is the address. So we will be entering that under the mail-in address. So the city is Nigambu. Nigambu, and also the country you can select the Sri Lanka because it's there. And this person is going to be the different category person. He is going to be the cash supplier. So we have to type that because that supplier type is not available. First supplier coming under the cash category. Account numbers are correct. Then you have got the telephone and fax numbers which we have to insert into the system by entering it, and you got the fax number also need to be inserted into the system in appropriate place, and you can see his email address also given to us which we have to enter into the system. System will keep all these records properly into the record card, and no other information regarding the web and the remit address, customer pickup method, and the method they are going to use for the default settings were COD, cash on delivery. So he is not giving credit to us. So we go to the purchase information tab, customer pickup method, and then modify this default setting. Now the first time we need to modify this customer term. He is giving us only the COD method. So no credit limit given for this particular situation, because every time you bring the items you have to make the payment. So remove the credit limit and tick on to the COD before we'll click save and new. So please check this carefully. This is the fourth supplier, save and new. Then moving into the next supplier, BR001 is the supplier code. Let us enter the supplier code quickly into the system. And then the name of the supplier is a Brilliant PLC, is the supplier's name, which will be entered under the name of the supplier. And then go to the general tab and enter the general information, contact person name, and other required information is the address and so forth. Mailing address, no account numbers. Mailing address is number 50 Columbus 7. Again we have to enter that into the system. So we will be entering that particular information as well, right? So I'm sorry. So enter the number 50 Columbus 7 as an address, mailing address. So we can get Columbus 7. And also country, if you like, you can select from the list. And credit supplier and his telephone numbers are provided, so we have to enter that also. Telephone number, credit supply, account numbers are correct, no need to change. So we have credit supplier category, select and enter the telephone number. Then you got the fax number of the person, we will enter that also. Fax number, that is going under the fax. And then you got the email address of the person, we need to enter that also. That is going to be your email address. Email address also need to be entered. Then we got some more information about the website as well. That particular customer is having their own web, so we have to enter that web details as well. And next you got the different address to remit. Again the customer name is required to enter that, so we have to re-enter the customer name first. So we'll go back and go to the address tab this time and enter the line number 2, supplier's name, and then we will enter the second address of the supplier, which was given number 22 Nugegoda. So that need to be entered as well as a second address where the payments are carried out through this. Only the payments need to be forwarded into that particular address, right? So number 22, and the city is going to be Nugegoda. It's available here, and the country is also available. So we have to make sure the payment need to be remitted into the remit to address. All the payment need to be directed into this particular address, right? Then you can click this, no, not click in save, because further you can see the customer pickup method and the default settings are changing for the particular given supplier. So we have to modify it. Go to the purchase information tab, customer pickup method is used, and modification to the vendor default settings, whereby you can see the new settings. He is giving 60 days credit, 20 days due, and 2% discount only. 60 credit is correct, and here discounted period is reduced to 20, and also discount percentage as well reduced to 2% only. So we have to accept that because that is the supplier's condition. And also he is reducing our credit limit to 300,000. He is not willing to give 500, so we have to modify. Please check this supplier and modify his terms and condition accordingly given in this window, and then click the save and update that. So we are moving into the fifth supplier. SK001 is the code. Enter in the supplier code into the appropriate place. Then the name of the supplier, Sky Private Limited, that need to be entered next. So we will be entering the name of the supplier into the name, and then moving into the general tab for the general information. Contact person is given, so the name need to be entered of the contact person that was entered, and also the address, mailing address of the company number 442 Gama. So that is the address we have to enter now. Mailing address Gama. And the country we can pick Sri Lanka. Further, we have credit supplier. He is also having credit supplier. Only the telephone number is available, no fax. That need to be considered. We have to select this as a credit supplier, and the telephone number is available, no fax number, but the email address is available, which we can enter as well into the system, whereby we will be able to contact this person through the mail as well. Then finally is the customer pickup method, and the default settings are applicable for the terms and condition. Customer pickup method and terms and conditions are default. Save and new. Finally, moving into the last supplier in this particular ledger. So we will be taking his code and entering the code as a ID number of the supplier. Then we got his name, Big Entertainment. This is a different source of supplier. We have to be very careful entering the data into this supplier. Name is entered, and then go to the general tab and the general information. Contact person name is given, which you have to enter first as a contact person. Then the address is given again, Colombo 10, number 116, and it's going to be the uh, Colombo 10, right? So that's the address. So you take that and enter it here. Mailing address Colombo 10. So we have to enter the city Colombo 10. And the country, if you like, you can select, or otherwise you can leave, no problem. And the credit supply, again he is giving the terms and conditions are credit, and meantime the account number is now changed into all these early suppliers are clothing business supplier. Now this fellow is going to be the training business supplier. Be careful. Now individual account will be changed to the TR, other receivable category. So TR account, right? Fix that is going, no, sorry, 6040 account, no, that is the account we have to select. 6040, I'm sorry, 6040 is the training material supplier. So if he's supplying the training material, that goes to the expenditure account called training material, right? Then his telephone number is given. We have to enter the telephone number as well. Enter the telephone, no fax number provided, but we got his email address and the website, which is the crucial information to be entered into the system. Email address, and also you got the website of the current person. So we will be entering his website, web address. And lastly, we can see the courier method is used, and the terms and condition also shifting. So we go to the information and select the courier method, and terms and condition shifting by giving the new condition. So we go to the customization, and then you can see 30 days only given. Credit period is reduced to 30, and discounting in days reduced to 10, and the discount percentage also reduced to 1% only, and the credit limit reduced to 200,000. So this is the condition applicable by the big entertainment company to your company called AFMA 2020 or to the BCom 2020. So we accept and click save. So now we have finished creating all the suppliers. To check everything in a one particular place, you can see the command called list is available in the same window. By clicking that, you will be able to see all the suppliers whom you have created just now. How many suppliers are there? At the bottom, you can see the vendor listed is number 7. So there are 7 suppliers already created without beginning balances. No beginning balance. One customer supplier is a cash based supplier, all others are credit suppliers, right? So this is the list of supplier. Another way you can see the list is you can close this window and then you go to the main window of the suppliers module, and if you refresh this button, click the refresh button, so you can see the supplier list will available now in the vendor module. So more and more supplier you create, that will be added into the list. At the moment beginning balances are not yet entered. So the next target is to enter the beginning balance. How to enter the beginning balance to the vendor? So the beginning balance can be entered into the vendor ledger by two methods. The first method, invoice wise. According to the invoice date by the created outstanding invoices, we can enter into the system. That means the first invoice is created in a particular day and the value. Second invoice in another day and the value. Third invoice in another day and the value. Likewise, invoice wise we can enter the balances, whereby it can bring into the age table accurately. Otherwise, you can enter the last date of the last financial year as a one lump sum these invoices value, right? So generally it is not practicing, because all the invoices are entered into the system according to the invoice date. So that's why individual invoice need to be feeded into the system. So first look at how to access into the beginning balance window. One method is, if you are in the vendor module, then you can go to the vendor button and then we can go to the view vendors, right? View vendors. From there we can double click one vendor, then you will be there in the vendor creation, vendor maintain vendor window. By going to the history tab, you can click the vendor beginning balance button, which will open up the beginning window balance, right? So that is one method. Second method, now if you are in the vendor ledger and you can see all the vendors are appearing here, you click one vendor, just like one vendor, go to his history tab and click the vendor beginning balance. So whereby again we can access into the same beginning balance window, right? Now here you can see all the vendors are there. There are two tabs. First tab shows the purchase from particular selected vendor called Big Entertainment. So here we can enter the invoice numbers, we can enter the date by using the calendar, we can enter the purchase order number if it is available, we can enter the amount and respective account. So this account need to be the credit account. AP mean accounts payable category. That means you have to select the account which gives the account type called accounts payable. This is the account, trade payable account. This the account need to be there as a correspondent account. So items purchased go to the debit inventory, credit to the supplier's account. Got the idea? So then if you want to move from one vendor to another vendor, you can go to the second tab called vendor balance. Here you can see all the vendors which you have created. Once you select the name of the vendor, go to the first tab and enter the invoices. Once you finish, come back to this side and select the next vendor, go and enter the values. After finishing everything, if you go to the last person and enter everything, then enough to click the save button. That will save all the vendors beginning balance together one by one. No need to save, right? So let's look at our handout and do this activity as well quickly. That will end up the particular lecture. So here the handout giving the activity number 5.6, giving your beginning balances. There are four outstanding balances to be paid for the four vendors. So the first person we need to pay the outstanding balances, COS001. So let's go to our beginning balance window and select the person. COS is COS clothing. So select the vendor from the vendor list and then come to the purchase information tab. Now you have to enter that details about the purchases. So let's enter these details now into that particular window, right? So this is the details we need to enter. So we will enter his invoices. So these are the invoices we are going to enter for the particular given vendor. So the first invoice number 125, invoice number 125, you can type that. And the date of the invoice, again you can see 10th of January 2020. That is the date of the created invoice. So right click here at the end, then 10th of January. So go to the calendar, select the date and the year 2020, 10th January 2020. Purchase order number is there, so we can enter the purchase order number as well into the system because it is given to us. So let us enter. And the amount of the purchase order is 130,000 and the correspondent account is 2000 CL. 110,000, that is the value of the invoice. Sorry, 130,000. Okay, 130,000. 130,000 is the invoice and the correspondent account need to be the accounts payable that is the account code 2000 CL. Okay, then you got another invoice from the same person, invoice number 138. We will be entering that into the second line, because it's still the date, outstanding date starting from the 17th of February 2020. We will change that 17th of February, second invoice again. And the purchase order number also given to us, so we will enter that purchase order number, and the amount going to be 40,000 rupees. Purchase order number, and the amount need to be 40,000 rupees. And the account number is going to be the same, so you should select the same account. Another invoice is there outstanding which is not paid. Invoice number is 145, that is supplier invoices, and the date of the invoice is 25th of March, which is also not paid. 25th of March, very recent one, before starting this year. 25th of March, and then the purchase order number is 140, that is our purchase order number, and also the amount in that particular invoice 110,000. Account number is the same, 110,000 value, and the account number same. Now you can see the total. We have 3 outstanding invoices to the COS clothing, and the total value of these outstanding is going to be 280,000. So I have finished that. Then I can move into the next step called vendor balances, and from there we can select the vendor balance. Now we can select the second supplier. According to the details, second supplier is going to be the NT001. So you can go back to your file and select the NT001, that is Nation Trade Private Limited. Then come back to the window whereby you can enter the details. So the first invoice number is 114, that need to be entered like invoice number. Then secondly, the date of the transaction happened in the January 2nd of the 2020. So we'll go to the calendar, January 2nd of the 2020. And the purchase order number, that is our purchase order 125, purchase order number given to the supplier. And the amount requested for the particular purchase order 120,000 rupees, and the same account 120,000 rupees, and the account number is 2000 CL. There's another outstanding bill for the same supplier, so the bill number is 140, that will be the second line, and the date of the transaction 20th of March 2020. So go back to the calendar, select the 20th March 2020, and the purchase order number is our purchase order number 138. Amount related to that purchase is 135,000, that need to be entered, 135,000, and the account need to be the accounts payable, right? So now you can see this particular supplier's outstanding value is 255,000, which include 2 invoices. At the moment you have entered 2 suppliers, total value now come to 535,000, right? 530. Then we can go to the vendor balance tab and select the next vendor, BR001. Select the vendor called BR001, Brilliant PLCs. Come back to the purchase from tab and then enter his only one invoice, invoice number 150, which is outstanding and not paid yet. So we will be see the outstanding, long outstanding. This is outstanding from the last year, 28 December 2019. So you need to go to the calendar and go back to the December month. 20, which date? I forgot the date even. So it is going to be 28 December, right? So select the date from the calendar, 28 December. Select the date. And then the purchase order number, it's our number. Purchase order number is available here. Purchase order 118. So we will enter that number as well. And the value outstanding, loan outstanding value is 85,000, not paid yet, for the purchase of items. Again, the account, cross account need to be 2000 CL. So it's only one. You can see this particular supplier's outstanding value is 85,000, one bill, and the total now gone up to 620,000 for the 3 vendors. Moving into the last vendor is called SK01. Select the vendor SK01 Sky Private Limited. There are 2 outstanding bills. First invoice is 110, invoice number. Enter that invoice number. Date outstanding from the 15th of February 2020. So we will be selecting the date 15th of February 2020. Purchase order number, which is our purchase order number, 130 is the purchase order number sent to the supplier. that will be entered, and the value of this purchase order is 70,000, belongs to the same account, 70,000 rupees, and account number will be the 2000 CL account. Second one, we got 120 is the invoice number of the supplier, 19th March. So the invoice number 19th March 2020, and the purchase order number again, purchase order is our 137, and the value required 30,000 to be entered. Purchase order and 30,000 outstanding, and the account number is same. So now we can see this particular supplier, that's Sky Private Limited, outstanding amount is 100,000, which include two invoices, and 720,000 worth of bills are overall outstanding. So when you go back here, this is the total outstanding. Actually, Puta, what I told you at the initial stage, there's no link between the general ledger and the suppliers module. We have entered manually this value as an outstanding balance of the creditors account. So save this first, click it save, and then close the window. Let me explain that by going to the main menu and going to the chart of account, list and chart of account. Now you can check trade payable account. You can see the total amount in the trade payable account currently having 720,000. Make a type kara manually. Now this consists of several outstanding from the various suppliers which was entered into the suppliers module. So now individual suppliers balances are accumulated value into one single control account. At the initial stage, first time අපේ linkages තිබුණ නැති හින්දා මේක අපිට manually දාන්න වුණා. But when it come to the next round, you don't have to do that. When you run the final year end running, automatically the balances available in the outstanding balance, the supplier ledger will transfer to this account systematically, right? So that is the situation. Now we have finished entering the data. You cannot see that balances here. In case if it is not visible, again click the refresh button. Then you can see the values, and immediately you can see the diagram is appearing red color. It says overdue 120 days. ඒක කොහොමද වුනේ? එකපාරට අපිට මෙතන පෙන්නනවා මේ ඔක්කොම invoices ටික දාලා තියෙන 720,000 is overdue more than 120 days. Yes, that because of the system date. පුතාලගේ system date එක තියෙන්නේ July 29, but the current month එක 4. So if you want to see the real picture, you have to bring the first date එක. So you go to the system date, adjust that to the first date of the transaction, 1st of April. That is the starting date. Okay, that now the situation you can see different picture. Most of the bills are within the 60 days range. Few bills are exceeded 60 to 90, and some very few items are exceeded more than 90. If you want to see the table and the values and the percentages, here the graphical presentation, here the table, you click, you can see the balances. So within 60 days, 365,000, 53.5% of the outstanding. 61 to 90 days, 250,000, 34.7% outstanding are there. 91 to 120 days, 85,000, one bill, that is December 1. So it's 11.8%, and nothing over 120 days. So this is the breakdown. Further, if you want to report, you can see the age payable report link here. Click that, you will be going to the report straight away. This can be printed, this can be Excel format, email, PDF, you get the breakdown. Column wise, පේනවා නේද ඔයගලන්ට අපි හදපු structure එක. Invoice number එක මොන column එකටද වැටෙන්නේ? Outstanding for the third column. This person, two invoices within the range, one is gone beyond the range. So you can see this person, one is within the range, one is outside the range. So you can see very simply reports are generated. So it's a matter of perfectly setting up, entering the details, then generating your required information through the different reports available in the system. So this is what we have to discuss under the topic called vendor ledger. So we have completed the vendor ledger by now. So let me show now what are the activities and how it is working. So we have entered the default settings, then we have creating vendor ledger. That is the second activity. Third activity is going to be the entering beginning balances. So that will be the third activity what we have completed. So let me expand this little bit. Now the situation to show. So go to the next line and enter in beginning balances. So මේ තමයි steps. එතකොට මතක තියාගන්න. When you are creating the vendor ledger, first thing you need to do, set the default settings relevant to the vendors. Secondly, create individual vendor cards. And finally, enter the beginning balances. So you have completed two modules by now, general ledger and the vendor module. So these two modules are now working together because the linkages are already established. I hope you got a good understanding of how to create the uh, creditors module or the vendor module, or we call accounts payable module. So please do these activities correctly by watching into the videos which was uploaded and complete this module, and finally then you can take the backup file after the module completion. So we will go by the chapter numbers. So file and go to the backup command, and then keep your company name as a backup file name and click the backup, and then select the place where usually you backup your data, and you have folders created for that purpose. So select that folder appropriately and go there and make it sure at the end within the bracket you can enter the chapter number. Chapter 5 is completed. Now this is the backup file which is required for the next lecture, right? After finishing the chapter 5, when you come to the chapter 6, you should open up this backup and then do your activities. So save it. That will be there in a place whereby you confirm it, clicking OK, and the file is backup in now into the location. So I think this is the story of how to create the supplier's ledger.